Hey Internet, Acid Jane here, and welcome to another speed build. So as you can see from the title of this video, today we are building something that is very chic and colorful and modern. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to title this video yet, but it's going to be something like chic and colorful, or modern chic and colorful, or colorfully chic. I'm not sure, but this build is definitely modern, and it is definitely very colorful. Not so much on the exterior, but definitely on the interior. The interior design with the colors particularly is not for the sim that is faint of heart, it is for a very bold sim. So this is actually my third attempt at building this build. The first attempt ended up being a failure because when I was recording it, the outside went pretty smoothly, the exterior went pretty smoothly, but it just took me so long to figure out the layout on the interior that I decided to just try again because it just would have been such a hassle to edit it down to something manageable. And the second time that I built this build, I finished the exterior. It looked pretty good. It looked a lot like the picture. But then I realized that because of the way that the driveway on this lot is positioned, that I actually needed to mirror the entire house. So originally, as you can see in the picture, the front door of this build was on the right side of the lot, but it just didn't make any sense for the front door to be on the right side and the driveway to be on the left side. So I decided to try once again and to mirror this build, to flip it around so that both the front door and the driveway were on the left side. I had to make some changes to the picture as well because, well, not to the picture, but to the build that I saw in the picture, just because of the way that this lot is. So this lot is a pretty good sized lot. It's a 30 by 20. However, it's pretty squat, so it doesn't leave much room for a backyard. And the original lot had a pretty big backyard and patio area. I was able to fit in something similar. It's just not as big as what was attached to the original house just because of the size of the lot. I also, because of the size of the lot, had to make the whole house a little more squat, which it's still pretty big, and I was totally fine with making it a little bit smaller because that was less space for me to fill up. I really wanted to build this house on this particular lot because, I don't know, I just really like this lot. It's in Windenburg, and it's in the countryside of Windenburg, but unlike a lot of the lots in the countryside of Windenburg, this one isn't close to a bunch of older, more traditional houses or older, more traditional decorative items that exist in the world around it. So that's why I really wanted to build on this particular lot, and that's why I decided that it was worth it to make some changes to the original house so I could build it on this lot. So a big reason why I chose this house to recreate was because the exterior of this house has a really interesting mix of textures. So it's got this horizontal colonial siding as well as some orange accents on the trims, as well as these vertical, very thin grayish panelings that look very modern, as well as some dark bricks on the columns, as well as this weird plasticky looking gray boxy area. I think that in the build catalog that actually is a plastic wall texture, which is pretty interesting, but I really like this interesting mix of textures. I really want to get better at using more than one texture on the exterior of my builds, and so I thought that this house was a good way for me to practice it. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit blasé about the roof on this house. It looks more boring than I had intended it to be. I tried for a while to mix it up and make it look really interesting, but it just looked bad. And so in the end, I decided, in this case, simpler is better. So it's not the best roof I've ever done. I feel like I just did my Handmaid's Tale build where the roof on that was really interesting and really difficult for me at least to do. And so I feel like, I don't know, I felt like I was being a little bit lazy in this case, even though the reason why I built the roof this way wasn't out of laziness, it was just because it looked better this way. So you can see me now adding on this back patio. It's a pretty good sized patio, a little bit smaller than the original, but I really like how it looks, and I think it's a fine place for your Sims to recline. I do end up getting rid of those brick columns in just a minute just because they didn't look right. It just doesn't look good when you try to make columns out of walls in The Sims. At least I can't seem to make it look good. Even though I really wanted to use that brick texture, I end up just using regular old columns and this cool fencing for the lattice work above. I finish up the exterior by adding in a lot of windows. I kind of feel like this house has a few too many windows. It just seems a little bit busy, but I did try to make up for that busyness by adding in a lot of symmetry with the windows. And even though the windows look a little bit busy from the outside, I think they look gorgeous on the inside. So that's why I included so many. And yeah, that was my reasoning for putting them where I did. Moving on now to the interior of the build. So as I said before, I had trouble with getting the layout right the first couple of times that I built this house, but it was much simpler this time around because the house was a little bit smaller. So I don't like having dead space in my builds, and by that I mean I don't like having spaces on the interior that aren't really functional. And there are a few of those in here, but not too many, and I really like how they're decorated, so I don't mind them so much. So one of those dead spaces is that front entry hall. It does look nice in the end, but I was kind of wary about it for quite a long time. I don't think I actually recorded me furnishing that, or at least not much of it, because it did take me a while to get right, but it does look nice in the end, and it is a pretty grand and modern entrance. So you can see that I'm starting off with the kitchen, and that I'm doing the same thing that I did in my recent Rebuilding Willow Creek build, where I stopped worrying about the color swatches in the beginning and just focused on getting the furniture items that I wanted. So you see a bunch of red cabinets right now. They are not red later on. I end up turning them into bright green counters for the most part. I mix in some white ones in there just to break it up a little bit. But I do find that it's really helpful for me to just pick out the furniture that I want, the items that I want, the style of items that I want first, and then to start mixing and matching color swatches later. By the way, I apologize if you could hear somebody vacuuming. Somebody's vacuuming somewhere in an apartment nearby, and I waited for it to pass for a while, and they did stop vacuuming, but then they started vacuuming in another room, so I'm just going to keep recording and hope that you can't hear it that much, but I apologize if you can. So back to the build. I wanted this living space to be a very ultra-modern and open concept living space. I actually don't know if you consider it ultra-modern. I think you just consider it modern. I think to be ultra-modern, technically it has to be doing something that's really new and innovative. And I don't know if this build quite does that. I think maybe the color palette is something that's new because it's just a very bold color palette that you don't find in a lot of homes, but I don't know if the layout is innovative in and of itself. But anyway, so I wanted to have a very open concept living space, and I wanted a set of counters to act as sort of a divider between the kitchen / dining area and the living room area. The living room area is going to be on the other side of where you see me putting in the stoves now. So I added in a half wall just because it looked really silly to have the stoves just out in the middle of nowhere, just with their backs facing the living space. So that's why I added in a half wall there, and I do think it helps tie it together. You can see me now setting up the living space. Again, I'm doing the same thing where I pick out the furniture items that I want, and then I worry about the color swatches later. So I have really been gravitating towards this rug that we got in Seasons. I like the way that it looks sized up, and I love so many of the color swatches that come with it. And I was really drawn to this green color swatch, which I don't think I've ever used before. I've used this rug a lot, and I use it a lot in this build and a lot in some of the other builds that I'm currently working on now too. I kind of overuse it, in fact, but I don't think I'd ever used this particular swatch. So this green rug was what really inspired the color scheme for the rest of the interior. There's a huge green theme that runs through it. So you can see that I have placed these super modern geometrical bookshelves, and I've actually flipped one around so they look like one big bookshelf instead of two bookshelves. And I actually hung a TV on this big middle section on those bookshelves because, well, I didn't want to have a TV stand in front of it just because there wasn't really that much room. And two, because, I don't know, it seemed like a modern idea, perhaps an even ultra-modern idea to have a TV sort of floating in the middle of this bookshelf. And it also took up some of the empty space in that bookshelf, which I really liked because that meant I had to spend less time finding clutter items to fill it up with. So you can see that I'm starting to carry over that green theme from the living room into the kitchen. I have changed the color swatches of the cabinets to green, most of them. I keep some of them white just because it was a little overwhelming to have so much green, but I also add in this concrete floor, which I thought really suited a modern build. I really like this concrete floor, actually, although I'm not really sure how I feel about concrete builds in real life. I work in a place that has concrete floors, and let me tell you, my dogs are aching after 8 hours of walking around on those, so I'm not sure how I would feel about having those in my home, but I think it looks really nice. You could also see that I'm starting to bring in pops of purple with those two chairs and with that city living painting, which is another item that I overuse. I decided to bring in those pops of purple after I saw that the light fixture that I use above the coffee table, if you look at it from below, it's got this, I guess it's a royal blue. Isn't royal blue like actually a purple tone? But yeah, it's got like this royal blue purpley lining that is a very subtle accent, but I really liked how it looked with this green color. And I also started incorporating a lot of blacks and a lot of this very reddish wood, the one that you see on the diagonal or chevron shaped paneling. I love that paneling, by the way. I would love to have that paneling in my house. I'm not a fan of paneling generally, but I really love that paneling. I think it's just a great accent wall, and I just think it looks super cool. So you can see me initially putting the dining room in this little room off to the side. However, I decided that I've got so much space in the kitchen area, it just doesn't make sense to have the dining room in a separate room. I feel like I could use that room somewhere else. So I decided to move the dining room into the kitchen area and to do something else with that room. I end up making it into an office / a music space. And I think that just works out much better. The reason why I was putting the dining room in there initially was because that was the way that the house that I took inspiration from had it. But in the end, I decided that wasn't the best thing to do for my build. You can see that I brought in more of that purple with that other sort of I guess it's a nighttime cityscape there in the background of the dining area. And yeah, I just really like how those pops of purple look. So I guess the color palette for this build is green, that very bluish purple, and black and white and brown. So I think that's a pretty neat color palette, and I really like it. Like I said, it's not a color palette that everyone would enjoy, especially not that green, but I really like green and I really like bold colors. If you didn't already know, my hair is highlighter yellow, so I am not afraid of color, and in fact, I really enjoy it. So you can see me now working on what I decided I wanted to make into an office / music area. So I'm not actually going to show you too much of me furnishing this room just because I struggled with where to put everything for the longest time. I couldn't figure out why it seemed so empty and why it just didn't make much sense to me where I was putting the furnishings. And I realized later on off camera that, this is an office and I totally forgot to put bookshelves in it. So once I figured out that I needed bookshelves, the furnishing came together. But unfortunately, I didn't realize that until much later, after much struggling and until I had already stopped recording. I knew, however, that I really, really wanted to use that very bright purple and neon painted brushstrokes looking rug. I don't know if I've ever used that rug in a build before, at least not in a speed build, and I definitely have never used that swatch, but I really like it, and I thought that it went really well with the color palette for the rest of the house. So while I was working on this office in particular, I started to think about what family I imagined living in this house, and I decided that I wanted to build this house for a family of 4, for a mom and a dad and 2 teenage kids. And I decided that I wanted the dad or the mom, it doesn't really matter, but I decided that one of the parents would be an award-winning game designer. So I wanted to fill this office space with, like a nice setup and a lot of the signed gaming posters that are in the Build By catalog. So I don't think that I actually show me placing too many of those here, although you could see the signed Blick Block one in the background. But I end up including a bunch more of those. I end up including a little trophy case with a few trophies that I thought could be like game design winning trophies, like awards for best RPG or whatever, I don't know. And I also include a lot of my Sims dolls on the bookshelves when I finally put the bookshelves in. I wanted to include those because my Sims dolls remind me of those, I don't know what they're called, but those cute little, almost robot-looking dolls that a lot of people have now. I forget what they're called, but yeah, I decided to include a lot of my Sims dolls because they reminded me of those and because those seem to be things that would suit an office like this one. So yeah, I decided that the dad, maybe, or the mom, it doesn't really matter which, would be an award-winning game designer, and that the mom, or perhaps the dad, or the other mom, who cares, would be a soap opera star who has also won a few awards for herself. So the master bedroom upstairs has some elements of that idea in it, as you'll see here in just a minute. So you can see that I've already done the layout for the upstairs portion of this build, and I really like the upstairs of this build quite a lot. I like the layout of it, and I like how each of the rooms looks in it. So you can see that I've chosen this purple bed that I think is from the Vintage Glamour Stuff Pack. I use a lot of items from the Vintage Glamour Stuff Pack in this room, and that's where I kind of got the idea that maybe the mom of this house was some sort of soap opera star, that she was a little bit of a diva perhaps, but a very chic and glamorous woman. And I thought that that fit in well with the design because clearly this house is for a family that is very successful and that has quite a deal of money. So you can be successful without money, obviously, but these people, they've got money, and they've got money to buy a lot of very bold and expensive furnishings. So that was the idea that I was going with here. So you can see that I am bringing more of that bright green. It's almost like maybe an ochre green, or is ochre more of an orange color? But it's a very bright green, and I'm bringing it from the downstairs to the upstairs as well. And I'm also trying to figure out what beds I want to use and who I want to furnish these other 2 bedrooms for. So I decided to start with this room that includes one of the beds that we got with Seasons. I really like this bed. I don't like the other bed that we got with Seasons quite so much because I don't like the color swatches on that other bed quite so much. A lot of them, and I can't believe that I, like the person who is very guilty of being matchy-matchy on my interiors, but I don't like how matchy-matchy a lot of the covers and pillows and even the bed frame is on that other Seasons bed. However, this one doesn't have that problem. It's got a good mix of complementary colors with the pillows and the covers, and it just, I don't know, it looks very luxurious and relaxing, and it also looks very realistic with the quilted cover. So like I said earlier, I furnished these other 2 bedrooms for 2 teenagers. I imagine that the teenager who lives in this room is a very girly girl. She has a lot of makeup everywhere. She likes those traditionally girly colors like pink and purple. And I really like how this build looks. I end up I don't think I actually end up using those vintage glamour posters. I do end up using this cherry blossom poster, but I put it over the bed. And I just think that I took a screenshot of this room earlier and I just love how it looks. And I really like this rug underneath as well. I love the colors in that rug, and I love how relaxing the waves look as well. I end up putting a desk with a computer and a lot more clutter items where I currently have that end table. But yeah, this room is a little bit narrow, so I had some trouble furnishing it. The screenshot that I took of this room doesn't include that little cabinet that I think came with either City Living or the movie night stuff pack. So the screenshot doesn't include that little cabinet or armoire, but I really love the swatch that I chose for it. It's like this very pale pink swatch, and it just looks super nice, I think. You can see that I start in this section of the speed build to work on the other bedroom, but I end up just putting a few things in there like a bed and a desk and then giving up on it for a while just because I felt like I was concentrating too much on bedrooms for a while and that I needed a little bit of a break. So I end up moving on to this upstairs staircase area as well as this little rec room off to the side for a while before coming back to that last bedroom later. So this rec room I think is super cool. It's got the same color palette as the downstairs, which I thought really tied the downstairs in with the upstairs pretty well. And what makes this room so cool, I think, is that rug. First of all, because that rug is dope. And secondly, I end up finding on the gallery a bunch of vintage-looking movie posters that are not custom content. I'm not exactly sure how the creator of those movie posters created them. I think that in the description for the room that contained those movie posters, they said that they took movie posters from a previous Sims game and then had their Sims paint those movie posters in The Sims 4. But you'll see them in the screenshots. I think you'll also see a bit of them in the speed build section of this video itself. But I'm going to include the gallery ID of that creator in the description down below. So be sure to check them out and be sure to give them a favorite on the gallery if you end up using those posters for yourself, because they are so cool. Really, really cool. I believe that user's name is Battle Inc. I think it's Battle Inc. Like I said, I'll include their gallery ID in the description down below. But thank you, Battle Inc., because those posters are amazing, and they really brought this upstairs together. Moving on now to the final bedroom. I told you I came back to it later. So I knew that I wanted to include this black swatch of this futon bed. I originally was thinking that this room would be for a teenage boy, but then as I started to furnish it, it just seemed like, I don't know, like it could be a cool room for a girl as well. Of course it doesn't matter, but it actually starts to get a little bit more, not girly, but it's got some feminine touches in the end, which I really like. I actually like this room better than the other room for myself if I had to choose one to live in. But I end up deviating a bit from the green and purple theme and instead going with more of like a black and a teal theme. So I was inspired to do that because I first picked out this mirror and I just really liked this teal or aqua swatch of this mirror. And then I found this rug and I really like that rug. And so that's when I decided to make a teal accent wall in this room. And I really like how it looked. So this room, the one thing that I don't like about it is that it looks a little bit empty. I had some trouble filling it up because the room is an awkward shape. That door, by the way, leads into a shared bathroom. The bathroom is shared with the other teenage bedroom. So the parents have their own bathroom, their own attached bath, and the teenagers have their own bathroom as well. I tried to squeeze in a third bathroom somewhere downstairs, but I just really didn't like what it was doing to the layout that I was already attached to. So if you download this build, it will be really easy to add in a third bathroom downstairs. It is a little bit annoying that the Sims have to walk upstairs and then through a bedroom in order to get to a bathroom, so it might be a good idea to add one on for yourself, but I don't know, I didn't like the aesthetics of it quite so much, so I decided to only include those 2 bathrooms instead of a third one downstairs. So you can see now that I have finished with the interior and that I'm now moving on to the exterior. So I'm just doing a little bit of landscaping for this build. The landscaping in this build isn't anything too special. I just tried to pick out some trees that match the trees that were already surrounding this lot. And then I add in a couple of flowery bushes around the part of the facade that sticks out the most, as well as in front of the backyard patio. And then some grass, and then I do some terrain painting, not too much, and then I call this build done. I'm sorry that in my builds, I just haven't been doing very much with the landscaping, at least not lately. I've never been a huge landscaper, but it's definitely something that I want to get better at. So know that that's a goal I have. I want to be more experimental in my future builds with the landscaping and with the terrain painting, because I just don't use those tools the way that some other people use them, and other people can use those tools to like an incredible extent. They could do incredible things with those tools, and I really want to learn how to do that because their builds look really great. I don't promise to do that in every future build that I do, but I definitely want to start experimenting with that more. Anyway, we're coming up now on the screenshots. I really hope that you enjoyed this build. Let me know what you think about the colors on the interior. Let me know if you would live in a house like this, or if you would at least have your Sims live in a house like this. Let me know if those colors are too bold for you, or if you like them a lot. Also, let me know what you'd like to see me build next. I'm thinking that I might lay off on doing a recreation for a while, because to be perfectly honest, The Handmaid's Tale took a lot out of me and I'm not quite ready to undergo such a feat yet. But I'm thinking that maybe I'll build something a bit more traditional, maybe even like a Tudor house, which could be pretty cool. Anyway, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you in another video very soon. Goodbye!